All right, everybody, welcome, welcome. Um, this is truly exciting. Glad to be here representing the University of Minnesota's Black Alumni Network. Um, so, as Black folks, we all understand that 2020 has thrown us some major curveballs, and they've impacted our community significantly and us as individuals. So, as part of our 2020 World Tour, we are here to kick off a discussion to hear from some alumni as experts, to hear them share their perspectives on the realities of the impact that 2020 has had on our culture, and to learn tips to take care of our own health, along with helpful insights, excuse me, to stay positive and healthy in 2020 and beyond. My name is Ernest Comer III. I'm the presidential co-chair for the University of Minnesota's Black Alumni Network. And our organization has been around for quite a while now, and generally around homecoming season, we'll host a number of events, including a tailgate event. This year with COVID-19, once again, throwing a curveball at us. Unfortunately, we weren't able to host that homecoming event with the University of Minnesota, but we decided to leverage the opportunity that the World Wide Web has granted us to engage with alumni around the world through a virtual world tour. So I'm truly excited to be here with you and truly excited to welcome a number of guests. Our session today is called How Not to Lose Your Mind in 2020. And I'm hoping that everybody who's joining us today will take a lot from the conversation that we get to have, get some great tips and ideas for how to keep yourself together as we move through the rest of this year. What I would like to do at this time is introduce our guests and have them join me on screen here. First, we have Mr. Anthony Taylor, who is a consultant in racial equity and mobility sector, specifically working with the Cultural Wellness Center. So welcome, sir. We're glad to have you today.
Thank you. Really excited to be here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We also have today Dean-Touré, who's going to be joining us now. If you don't know, this is one of our alumni who's traveled internationally, and she's now working in leadership and empowerment through her company, CMD Global LLC, joining us from Paris. So thank you for making time to be with us today. I know that our time zones are slightly different, just a slight variation there. So I'm glad you were able to make the schedule work for you.
Hello, thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely. And last, certainly not least, we have the Mr. Jegna Institute himself, Mr. Brandon Jones, who's a therapist in the Twin Cities. Thank you for being here with us today, sir.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
All right, good stuff. So these are our guests for today. We want to make sure that we recognize each of them and recognize everybody who's joining us today, and just appreciate you all spending time with us. So as we dive into our conversation today, I want to get us started with just summarizing what 2020 has been for you in 3 words. So as you think about what this year has been and how it's gone for you, in 3 words, how would you describe it? And tell us a little bit about what that means to you. Today, if you could kick us off, please.
All right, ladies first, huh?
Absolutely.
All right, so 3 words. The 3 words I would say for 2020 has been loss, shift, and opportunity. And so loss, because I know a lot of us have lost loved ones, right? We've lost jobs. Some people have lost things. I personally experienced loss of loved ones and family members during this time. And so I think that resonates a lot for myself and others. So loss, shift, because I've been forced to shift in so many ways. It's, I feel like moving to Paris, France, that was one shift, one transition. And now just being in this whole pandemic globally has caused me to shift my mindset, my perspective, how I do things. I think a lot of us can relate to that, right? And thirdly, opportunity, because even in the midst of the loss and the shifting and all these things, there still is opportunity. I started a new contract with the organization I'm with, Global Partnership for Education, and also just been working more on my business and in the process of creating an online course. And so there's definitely been some opportunity and to be able to rest too, that opportunity to just step back and rest. So those have definitely been my 3 for 2020.
Good stuff. Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Jones, what about you?
Yeah, well, for me, I would say the 3 words that come to mind is grief. I think one of the biggest things that we've experienced is significant ambiguous loss, whether that's opportunities, our normal routines, experiences. Some people lost life, jobs. Like we've gone through a significant amount of grief, and we're still going through this grieving process. The next one for me would be adjustment, because we've all adjusted to this new normal, and we might not be adjusting back to what happened, February 2020, we may never be back in that space. So we're adjusting in the moment as best as possible as we move forward. And then the last word for me would be growth. I think that there's been a lot of potential for a lot of people and a lot of creativity that it has been birthed throughout the many tragedies that we've experienced, unfortunately. But I think that it's pushing us to think ahead and to be prepared and to be flexible, which traditionally Black folks have already been doing for quite some time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Thank you. And Mr. Taylor.
Well, this year, my 3 words, one was lament. I think that I really agree with Brandon. I think that, we don't take time to actually lament, to actively mourn and create a process that and mourning is a much more active process that we move through and come on to the other end of that. And I think it's intentional. We need to do that intentionally. I think the other word was recognize. And recognize the reality of our lived experiences, recognize the truth that these moments have told us, and just to absolutely be there, that we're not wrong, that we're not wrong in terms of what we're experiencing. And then the last thing is reconnect. And I think the reconnecting, one is reconnecting through a lineage. I think that it is really important for us right now that we look at this moment and we reconnect to the generations that have been here before, right? That we recognize that and reconnect to this as a continuation of a challenge and a fight that has been incessant, right? Since we first set foot on this soil. Matter of fact, set foot on the boat on the water to get to this soil. This is actually a connected, a millennial connected struggle that we've been in, and this is our most important moment.
Good stuff. Thank you. Appreciate you sharing. Now, I have a handful of questions that were sent out to the panelists ahead of time, so you got an opportunity to see those. And while we're, going through those and having that conversation, certainly folks who are joining us virtually have the opportunity to contribute. If you have questions, please feel free to throw those into the chat. And we would love to be able to give some time to answering some of the questions that come from the audience as well. So thank you for that. The first question that I want to get into is what are some new, what are 3 tips or strategies that you recommend for your fellow Black alumni for not losing our minds in the midst of all we're experiencing this year with so many things going on? What are some of the things that you're doing, or what are the things that you would recommend others do to just keep themselves together and keep moving through the rest of this year and beyond? Mr. Jones, you want to kick that off?
Sure. Yeah. So three things that I have encouraged a lot of people, including myself, to do is what I call the ABCs of resilience. And the A is for adaptive awareness. So just paying attention to what's going on and being able to adjust and having that flexibility to the best of your ability to adjust. The B's for balance and boundaries. One of the things that COVID-19 has done is it has really just changed our normal day to day, and people have found themselves off balance. People are overextending themselves for others, or they're closing off for themselves. Their time and energy is off. Like there's just so much that's out of balance. So one of the big things I'm in is helping people get balance where they're at so that they can continue to move forward. And then the C is for consecutive constructive choices, and just building those habits to keep yourself, engaged, being proactive with your self-care, being sustainable, because we just don't know what's going to happen next. And as we know, as Black folks, we go through so much stress as it is that we have to be able to have healthy, proactive self-care as best as possible. So those would be my three things: adaptive awareness, balance and boundaries, and then consecutive constructive choices.
Stuff. Good stuff. Mr. Taylor, what about you?
Similarly, I think the biggest thing is to be incredibly proactive. And one of that, in terms of that proactivity, one is I think that we have to willfully and actively surrender to what's going on. And I think rather than even long for that old normal, this is what we're dealing with. And I think that the way that we maintain this balance, especially, is that we really do have to connect to nature. So the people that that know me here, I'm based in the Twin Cities. I think that there is a way where we have to connect to the cycles of nature. That we have to really create a rhythm in our day. Brother Brandon was talking about this. I mean, like literally creating a rhythm, an active rhythm to the way that days are structured, to pay attention to the daylight and the temperature, and that you really construct your spaces around you using all of your senses to be able to do that. And that, may be a very conscious kind of strategy around how we use aromatherapy, for example, in different spaces and different rooms for different times of day, and that creating rituals around when we eat and what we eat, and really being conscious of that, and really using all of those as rituals. And I'm really defining rituals as very specific events with very specific timing and very specific meaning. And those can help create balance and normalcy for us, and our ability to recuperate and to be resilient in the moments. And then the last thing that we have to really still cultivate these relationships that nurture and validate us. And there's so right now, especially in COVID, we are seeing people are trying to tell us that we cannot relate, but we have to use the tools we have and the ways that we can do it to relate. And right now, nature is the safest space we have. So again, for us to do that and be conscious of it. And the last phrase I usually use with that is this idea that motion creates emotion. We have to get ourselves active and moving. And I just have seen so many people that have gone through this and are less healthy, and we have to be conscious of that, and that really we are the arbiters and directors of our own health, and we have to see what's happening in our health as an outcome of the activities and things that we're committed to, and if we're not feeling our best, we have to respond immediately to it. So.
Absolutely, good stuff. Mrs. Turay.
All right, so I'm just bouncing off of Mr. Jones and Mr. Taylor, especially with the background of social work, self-care, and you hit it on the nail, Brandon, with just being radical in our self-care right now and doing what I'd like to call check-ins with ourselves, right? So actually asking yourself, how am I feeling today? How is my body feeling today? What have I been doing? What am I lacking? And being in tune with that, right? Doing a self-assessment, because it's so important more than ever now that we're in tune with how we're feeling, and just with practicing, again, radical self-care is so important. The second thing, and this, again, I like to keep things super simple. I call it KISS, keep it super simple, is turn those notifications off. Listen, sometimes you just need to turn off the notifications and disconnect with social media, with the news, with everything, so that we can reconnect with ourselves, reconnect with our mind, body, and spirit. And there's just so much going on right now. So notifications, if you have them going every second, if you can, turn them off, or even if it's for one day or an hour, whatever it is, because we have enough going on, okay? Notifications can drive us. What do we say? How not to lose our mind in 2020. And then shift, right? So shifting from being caught up in what's going on to sort of this attitude of gratitude, being mindful of taking moments to just think about what you can be grateful for right now. Whether that's through journaling, whether that's through speaking that out loud, whether that's as simple as opening up your phone and going through your pictures and seeing just the amazing moments that you've had, whether it was before or even beginning of 2020, and just really shifting to gratitude and remembering there is a lot to still be grateful for, even with all that we're going through. So those are my three.
So thank you. I appreciate it. And actually, it's a great segue into the next question, because it's really about the silver linings of, you know, what 2020 has brought us. It's what are some new insights you've gained for yourself as a silver lining out of this year? Now, I've been calling on people this whole time. Now, I don't want to be forced to call folks out. I'll give you space to jump into the conversation, but that's the next question is, you know, what are some silver linings from this year?
I'll dive in there.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I'm gonna be completely transparent and honest about this. If the gym's closed, I get fat. That's one thing that I learned. That I am dependent on the gym to work out. Home working out is not my thing, and it just ain't. And when I get off my habit, this is why I brought up those consecutive habits and why consistency is important. We ended up being unhealthy when we're not consistent and being proactive. And I got that COVID-15 real quick, real easy too. And I think it's important that we shift our mentalities, because when our environments shift, so do our mindsets. And that's a very important lesson to learn. So jokingly, yeah, the gym definitely has made a shift in myself, but also focusing my time and being more intentional with how I spend it has been something that I've learned over this year. I do a lot of different things. Like it says therapist here, but I'm a professor, I'm a dad, I'm a husband. I got all these other things that I do as well. But taking time for myself was one of the things that I had to do in 2020. It forced me to. And having that luxury of being at home more and things of that nature, I started taking naps. I just take an hour nap, just schedule nap time. And that's just something I don't do. I just go until I crash, but I just start taking naps. And what I felt was that was just a point in the day for me to just reset. And I would just schedule those into my day. So something just as simple as that can help you reset and move forward.
Good stuff. Thank you. Thank you. Did you want to dive in?
I agree. I think that one of the a couple of silver linings. One was that it in an odd way, just cutting out travel time created a tremendous amount more time in the day. And I hadn't really considered how much time was spent in transit, and so it really created a rhythm for me to my day. And speaking of working out, I mean the challenge was I was like trying to go to the gym at 5:30. And I didn't realize, but now without travel, I was going to the gym at 7, right? Getting that in, and so it just gave me my day back, and I gained all this time, and I was working at home. But the other thing that it did is that the strategy around COVID, around small pods of community, really forced me to be intentional about that. And so I have children. I wasn't able to see my mom, that was really deep, but creating another elder or relationship that was really important. So I created my pod. And one of the strategies I use, make it intergenerational, right? I got myself, I got my kids, and just even almost thinking about these kind of 20-year windows of difference is enough where we're not in the same stage. So even though we're looking at the same thing, like it looks totally different, and that creates and cultivates some opportunity for us in terms of how we engage. And so because I wasn't able to see my parents, I filled that pod space with another elder in the community that was geographically closer and more accessible, healthier, you know, less concerned. And we created, you know, consciously, intentionally created this network of 16-year-old, 36-year-old, 56-year-old, 76-year-old, you know, in this pod. And it wound up being really amazing because with all the stuff going on, we literally consistently engaged and interacted around, I mean, you know, there's been so much stuff going on. There's no shortage of things to talk about, right? So we have been deeply, deeply engaged in observing and working through this time, and some rich learning and connection has come through that. So that has been an absolute unintended benefit of this time.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
Just to piggyback, definitely I can relate with the what you guys mentioned, being intentional, right? During this time, especially as it relates to reaching out to people. And I think for me, I have just a little bit different perspective because I've moved a lot and I'm now living in France. I've been so far away from my family for the past 4 years. Just creating those pods is so important. I've realized that since the move here, what you said, Anthony, is so key, in having those elders and creating those relationships, even in your new space, right? Whether it's this new virtual space or a new space completely in a different country. But another thing that I think has been the silver lining for me is that, you know, it's okay not to be okay. Like, it's okay to slow down. It's okay to not do anything. I think, you know, moving here, I realized that one thing I do appreciate about the French, although there's been a lot of times when I've knocked my head and there's some things I'm still trying to figure out, is that I really see that balance. And we talked about that in the beginning. I know Brandon and Anthony talked about balance, but, you know, when they're done with work, listen, they are done with work and they're going on for, you know, whether it's a rendezvous or a apéro, and just to sit down at the La Seine and do absolutely nothing. And I really have come to appreciate that. And I think in this season, when we've been forced kind of to do nothing, right? We have to face the fact that our worth and value isn't just based on how much we can produce, how much we can do, how many titles we have, how much work we can get done in 24 hours, but really just who we are. And I think that's been the silver lining, is really just being aware of that. My value and worth isn't just based solely on what I can do, what I can produce, and that it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to pause, to breathe, to break. And hey, there's some people that have been extra productive during this time, but there's some people that haven't been able to do anything, and that's fine. But I think that's been the silver lining, is being okay with wherever I am in this season, whether it's super productive or taking them naps or, you know, resetting the whole day away. But that's been, I think, the biggest learning lesson for me.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. I think there's a lot that we can all take away from that. There's so many different things going on. There's so much pulling at us at all times of the day, and in so many different contexts, and family and community, etc. There's one specific question that is intended for Brandon, but certainly open to everybody on the panel to answer. Brandon, can you talk about racial battle fatigue, what it is and what it looks like? Because I think it's relevant to specifically this part of the conversation.
Absolutely. You know, so far we focused a lot just on the pandemic and how our health has been and our lives have been shifted by COVID-19, but we can't escape also our existence in this world and society just in general, about just being Black folks. And what does that mean? I mean, earlier on the call, we talked a little bit about being alumni of this university, and us not having the strongest alumni situation. Why is that? We all went through an experience at the U as Black students. That's racial battle fatigue. I remember some of my first interactions on campus thinking like, okay, here I am, I'm amongst all these white folks, even though I'm a Minnesotan, this is a different environment. And then feeling that pressure I have to do this. I remember I used to lie and tell people I was on the football team for the longest, and I wasn't. But it worked because I was a Black dude on campus, and I knew a lot of the football players. It worked, right? But that was me, falsifying my identity to try to fit somebody else's comfort level. And that's just stuff that we end up doing, unfortunately, as Black folks. So during COVID-19, we talk about working remotely. What do people think? Are they going to judge what's happening in my background? I don't want to turn my camera on because I ain't do my hair this morning. I don't want nobody saying nothing crazy to me. Like we have all these thoughts that go on due to our racialized conditioning. And then what ends up happening is it causes a lot of pressure and stress on us. And that stress can turn into toxic stress where we are literally having a physical reaction to the environments that we're in. And I think COVID-19 has really just, lifted up a rug to what we've already been dealing with and just added a little bit more pressure. Then you have the murder of George Floyd. Then we have Breonna Taylor. We have all these things that also go on that cause pressure. I talk to a lot of Black professionals here in Minnesota, and they're like, man, if I get on another meeting and somebody sends me a private message in Zoom saying that they're sorry for what's going on in the world, I'm going to cut somebody out. And that's how people are, because we have to continue to deal with this stuff all the time. And now society wants to be a little bit more open and have conversations. And a lot of us are just stressed out. We don't want to talk about it as much because it's too traumatic. So racial battle fatigue is just the psychological stress that we go through just on a day-to-day, just being Black people.
Yeah, 100%, man. I know that. A lot of the challenges that we're facing in community, and so I know just on a personal level, I have to constantly carry a lot of weight in thinking through, what are the right things to focus on for our community. Where can we put energy that's going to be most beneficial for the greatest amount of people that are being served by the communities throughout our organization, and what's going to be the greatest win for leadership throughout our community. It's a really tough thing to have to think through when you're already going through all these other things, specifically connected to the pandemic and whatever other challenges, because life goes on. Right. While all of these challenges are happening to us, regular life happens. Like, I still got to do the dishes. I still had to cook dinner before it is, there's so many things that we have to focus on just as humans that it becomes super challenging for us. Anthony, today, anything you want to add to that piece? All right. Trying to get those mute buttons working. It's all right.
No, all is well. I think that I just think it was so important to mention that, because I think what I saw also from my end was that in the midst of this, right, we wanted to be proactive, use our voices, share the knowledge, but there was also this sense of those who were just tired and needed to disconnect, and knowing that it's okay. However, we decided as Black people to show up in our community for ourselves, whether that meant posting and retweeting and sharing and using our voice and all of these things, or that meant simply taking a step back to rest and focus on ourselves and recuperate. And so I like that you spoke about that, Brandon, just about the battle fatigue and being very aware that this isn't something that just happened, right? And I'm from Minneapolis, Minnesota, just seeing what we've gone through, I think, and just everyday, simple, everyday life things. And it compounds and it piles up. And I think some people are just really tired and just being able to say, okay, yeah, it's okay for me to step back and be tired and not want to deal with this right now, or not text a coworker in the private message and say, oh, thank you for feeling sorry, or whatever that means. So.
Absolutely. Thank you. Now, Anthony, there's another question specifically for you. And it says, what keeps you encouraged to focus on whole health while navigating a pandemic and the many other challenges that have come in 2020? Somebody who, is in this industry where you're focused so much on physical, mental, emotional well-being. How do you, as somebody who's not in that industry, continue to keep your focus on your well-being?
Well, getting old helps. You know, I think, you know, the biggest thing is I think that it is, you know what what I'll say a lot of times, and I think this is really follow up to Brandon, and you know, I said it is just statements, is that you have to ask yourself, who cares for the caretaker? Like, that's just a foundational question. And the Black instinct, the instinct of Black people, is to always be deeply engaged in the struggle in their community, to reach back to, like, that's the nature of Black people. And, you know, I'm really interested in hearing where you are in Paris, because that's one of my favorite Black cities, actually, because when you travel internationally, what you see is that the instinct of Black people culturally is the same in Senegal, the same in Paris, the same in Minneapolis, the same in Mississippi. And so with that said, you have to always ask yourself, who cares for the caretaker? And if you won't do it, you will not be able to care for those you love. And that's just the foundation of who we are. And even as we say that, we have to also acknowledge that there is a full-blown white supremacist assault on your body and your well-being, no matter where you turn. So if you commit to those two ideas and understand who cares for the caretaker, and that there is an assault on your Blackness no matter where you go, then that makes you go, I have to be fortified, right? I have to use food as medicine. I have to recuperate. I have to have nurturing, positive, impactful relationships on a daily basis, right? I have to honor my relationship to ancestors and to the universe. I mean, you know, and because if you don't, you will diminish. You know, I mean, you'll disappear. And I know that to be the case. And for anyone who is an alumni, doesn't matter where you come from, there's something placed on you, right, to represent, to take those with you. I mean, there's something comes with all of that too, you know. And I love Brandon's story about football. I came to the U to play football because of 18-year-old ego. And in college, everybody's fast and big. So I was majoring in engineering, but my ego, like, you know what I mean? So I finally quit that freshman year and focused on school. But yeah, no, the false identity, right? And the reward, the way that the world will reward you for that false identity is like really critical. And I would say that right now, honestly, I'm going to just say that Black women, especially, are under an interesting light to be seen, you know, as the intersectional, super, racial responder. Like, I think there's a really interesting moment as we work in our community of Black women who historically have not been nurtured. I mean, that's real too. So I think that's really what drives us, and I hope that's what motivates us all, because everyone on this call is committed to, you know, changing the world.
Absolutely, man. Thank you. Today, Brandon, anything you want to contribute to that piece? All right.
I'll yield. Go ahead, Celi.
What'd you say?
Say, go ahead if you want to go. I'll go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say thank you, Anthony, for mentioning that with just with Black women. And I think one thing too, when I talk to my other girlfriends, like, we've stayed connected, whether it's here, and you mentioned Paris. I've actually built up this sort of small community of Black women that have been from California or Chicago or, you know, Senegal or Gambia, just all these different places. And just being able to connect and have that moment to share that we can relate to each other, right? And I think also giving ourselves as Black women during this time, because we have been the backbone of so much of our societies, whether it's internationally or at home in movements, civil rights. I mean, throughout history, Black women have been the backbone in these, and our voices, and in just societies, right? And going forward. And I think also what I've seen is just also being able to give ourselves permission as Black women to take off the cape and not always have to be strong and superwoman that everybody sees us as, and saying, you know what, I'm actually broken right now. I can't handle this. I don't know what to do. And that's been the biggest thing I've seen in this season, is just also giving ourselves as Black women permission to say, I'm not superwoman right now, and I don't have it all together. and I can't be that strong sort of backbone. I need my brother. I need my husband. I need my friend. I need you, right? To sort of fill in for that and saying, you know, it's okay. I'm still a woman. I'm still important. I'm still valuable. And I think that's been important to just, it's okay as a Black woman to take off that cape and put it to the side and not be superwoman.
Good stuff. Brandon, what are you gonna?
Yeah, that's a really strong point. I typically don't talk about Black women. So I usually get in trouble. But what I would say is Black women have traditionally been conditioned to be the caretakers of everyone and then take care of themselves later. And I don't think that that's right. And I see so many Black women who have formed community here in the Twin Cities and have supported each other. And really, once the aftermath after George Floyd's murder, Black women were the ones on the ground organizing and keeping the community together, if we want to be honest about it. And, being able to be a Black man and to see that and to also support those women, I think is very, very important so that they don't feel like they need to have a cape all the time. And it's more of a unison movement than just Black women stepping up to the plate and doing everything. So I do think that we need to support Black women and understand the historical context behind why Black women do step up. And I think also Black women have to pay attention to that as well, and not always feel like they have to stand up for the call as well. One of the sayings that has really come back and been very popular of late has been check on your strong friends, because a lot of the Black women who are out here doing things, they're struggling behind closed doors, and we have to be able to support one another to the best of our ability.
Absolutely, man. I think
I just want to throw one thing that's interesting about that too is this, we talk about allies and how we are challenging white people to really understand that role. This is an interesting opportunity for Black men, right? Because there is a power dynamic of maleness that is also real. And so this is also one of those interesting opportunities around about men as allies, Black men as allies to Black women in the movement right now. So I think you're absolutely right about that.
Absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate it. Now, our next question, of course, is for Ms. Sade. How do you maintain confidence and stay empowered in a season where personal struggles become overwhelming? So all of us are dealing with so many different things. How do you stay in that space of being the best version of yourself?
I like that question. I think one, it goes back to what we sort of started out with, and we had this conversation in the beginning, is being authentic, right? Being honest with where you're at in this season. And one of the things, and again, this is super simple. Sometimes it's the simple things, is just giving ourselves more grace. Giving ourselves more grace, whatever that looks like to you in this season. Being able to put priorities over perfection, right? And so what I mean by that is, as you're giving yourself grace, whether that's to rest, to recuperate, to plan, to create, whatever it is, knowing that things may not be perfect in this season. And our goal shouldn't actually be perfection anyway, but that's someone that's also a perfectionist that has to work on that. I'm saying that, but just focusing on priority. For example, maybe, we're fathers, we're mothers. Some of us have our families at home. We're taking care of elders. We're trying to balance our work hat. What is a priority for that day? You may only have one or two things that you can get done. That's most important. And that's so fine. That's okay. That's fine. And there was actually a quote that I posted not too long ago. It's an affirmation from this sort of declaration ebook that I created last year called Her Declarations. And I think it's so relevant right now. And basically that affirmation was, I give myself permission to rest in God's grace and to do what is healing for my mind, body, and spirit. And so, we all come from different backgrounds, different beliefs, whatever that is, but giving yourself permission to rest in that grace and to do what is necessary for your own healing, your own body, your own spirit, and your own physical well-being, right? And I think that's how we maintain that confidence, because sometimes our lack of confidence comes from, again, feeling like we have to produce and be perfect. And then we're online and we're comparing, oh, I see homegirl and homeboy over here. They just started a new business in the midst of the pandemic. And it's like, what did I create? Well, if you only kept your mind and woke up in a sane state of mind, that is enough. And so I think keeping your confidence is really not falling into the comparison trap, giving yourself grace, okay, to do what is necessary for you in this season, even if it doesn't look like what everybody else and their mama is doing, okay? I think that's so important, and it's super simple. But again, and then priorities over perfection. We're gonna get it wrong, we're gonna make mistakes. Brandon mentioned, not being able to go to the gym, all this stuff. Like, you know what is priority? How can you best get it done, and give yourself some grace, because we all need it in this season.
I think that's super insightful, and I just appreciate that reminder about, the challenge that we have as a community, I think, is really with comparison, constantly looking at the folks that are outside of ourselves, right, in our community, in our neighborhood, and comparing ourselves to them. And we even, like, jokingly, it happens all the time where I remember a conversation specifically, running into a friend, and he had been doing some just incredible stuff, as many of my friends do. And I ran into him like, man, like, you're doing big things. I'm trying to keep up with you, man. I can't do what you do. And he's like, man, listen, comparison is the thief of joy. I said, oh, well, okay, let me get my life together then. I'm sorry, I didn't know. But I think it's 100% true. So definitely thank you for sharing that. Brandon, Anthony, anything you want to contribute to that piece?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, we're all on a different journey, and going through our lives, we're going to take different strides and different paths to get to our goals. I think one of the important things that Sade was mentioning is that you have to be able to find some purpose. And a lot of people have lost a lot of hope and a lot of purpose during this year. And one of the things that I try to encourage people to do is have multiple purposes. It's not just one thing. We always try to find that one thing, and we never will, because we are missing all the other blessings around us, because we're always searching for this one particular thing. There's so many different types of purposes out there for people. And when you find that thing, put some effort into it, invest in it, because that's what's going to make you happy. A lot of people who are struggling during this time, and they're seeing how other people are striving and doing their thing on social media, it's because they're looking out the window and they're not looking in the mirror. And you have to do that self-check, which is important.
I think in terms of Brandon, just piggybacking off of that, one of the things I would say is that we also have to let people know your work doesn't have to be your purpose. I think, work can be work, and I think that is something that that's really been sold to us and packaged. It's in every motivational book out there that, that happens. And I think if you fill your life with purpose, and your work facilitates that purpose, right, that is as meaningful. And I think that that's something that I really, I don't know where everybody else. I grew up in Milwaukee with parents who had rough jobs in factories that were first generation from Mississippi. And you know what? That the purpose in their life was getting those 4 Black boys into college and through it. And it gave their life deep meaning, and work sucked, right? But the purpose-filled life they had, around their boys and around community and those things, it drives you and feeds you, and it makes short work of a tough day. So again, work doesn't have to be your purpose, right? It can just facilitate your purpose. It can just give you the means for living your purpose, and that's good too. So I'll just add that to Brandon's comments.
Absolutely, I think that's extremely powerful.
That's some gems. I appreciate insight being shared.
Hey, Ernest.
Yep.
You're breaking up a little bit when you're speaking.
Oh no.
Yep.
All right.
You might want to repeat that lovely thought.
So I'm taking away a couple of great things. We're getting a lot of great insight from the conversation here. Definitely the idea of not looking out the window, but looking in the mirror, and the idea that work doesn't have to be your purpose. It can facilitate purpose. Really great stuff. We have a couple of questions that are coming into the chat, so I want to make sure we catch those. The first one here says, we mentioned essential oils and eating healthy foods. What other advice do we have for holistic and natural self-care product recommendations, methods, or techniques?
Yeah, I'll give you a twist on essential oils. I think that one of the things, I think that we think about them in a really prescriptive way, you know, where you go lavender calms, peppermint excites, that kind of thing. And so something experiential for you to do is to sit with a friend, get some essential oils, or, you know, and sit with a friend and have them just let you smell them and not know what they are. And all you get to say is, I love it or not, right? And find the two or three that when you are doing that, you immediately smell them and not recognize them, but you immediately smell them and like them. And then what I want you to do is use those in your energizing positive rituals, because the part of aroma that is really deep is that it is your deepest sense directly connected to emotion, right? I mean, of all your senses, it is the most deeply connected to emotion. It is connected to, and physiologically, it's connected. It's the only one that has a direct connect to the brain, right? In terms of the molecules and so you could create a really positive ritual, because every time you smell those aromas, it will make you feel positive emotions. So that's the idea, is to identify those aromas that make you feel positive emotions. And you should use those to start your day. You should smell them right before you go into a serious meeting. You should smell them right after coming out of a tough situation. And it just is like 2 or 3. It's not complex and there's no science to it. It's just based on that personal emotional connection. And like I said, think about them in creating rituals, right? Create transitions in your day using very specific things so that, you know what I mean? So when I say transitions, meaning coming out of work, going into work, moving from work to family, you know, because I think that's the thing. And I feel like maybe today, maybe I've kind of touched on this, is this idea of how are you feeling what you feel, right? And being directly in the moment of those emotions. And when you're with family, I just think we have to separate those things sometimes, right? You know, and create these transitions so we can fully be engaged. And I think that's just a simple idea that puts you in control of creating those rituals for yourself, tapping into your emotional, you know, superpower around smell, and really, you know, and letting you be more in charge of your life. I mean, that's something that I share with people, and everyone really enjoys it. Or using a candle, right? Not for light, but for the light you need. You know what I mean? Like, so that's what lighting a candle in a ritual way when you come, you know, when you come back out of it, something, you know, just think about the idea of connecting, you know, emotion and your senses to experiences that create emotional transitions for you. And it should help you feel good.
Good stuff. Thank you. Thank you. Brandon, today, anything you want to add to those?
The only thing I would add is just make sure that you're just taking intentional action and finding what, you know, what is that thing that helps you, you know, maintain, you know, peace, maintain sanity, maintain a level of calmness. For some people it's baths, some people it can be essential oils, some people just need this time. They just need to have silence, or they need music. They put headphones on, listen to a podcast, something of that nature, but just be intentional with whatever you need to help kind of get yourself in a good space. Utilize that, make it intentional.
Good stuff. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So the next question says, it's just asking, can the panel speak to how best we collectively can make progress toward scaling up of disparities we face as a community. I think it's just asking, like, how can we close gaps that we see in the community?
That's so good. I think all of us have a lot to say, and I'm interested to see what Brandon and Anthony have to say. But I think one thing I will say is starting within our immediate community, right? So reaching across, whether that be to our family, our friends, our loved ones. I know me and some girlfriends, one way we try to help close those gaps is actually purchase from each other's businesses. I know other people who have businesses. And so it's saying, okay, you know what, this month I'm going to choose 2 persons, small business, they're coming up, and I'm going to make an intentional decision to purchase and buy something with them, or, you know, plant a seed into their business or whatever that looks like. If someone needs some help, being able to be that help, right? In this time of need, a lot of people lost jobs, they lost things. What can we do? You know, whether it's buying some groceries and having them delivered to a family member, a friend, a loved one. But I think starting like in your initial circle, I would say, and actually building each other up, whether that's supporting each other's businesses to close that gap, being able to plant a seed and help someone. And then, of course, I know Brandon and Anthony have some more to say, but I would just start there, is starting in your immediate circle and building up from there, and not always looking at how I can necessarily on a global scale. I'm here, we're very much globally connected, but sometimes I think we think, and we should, how we can help each other around the world and change this world, but sometimes changing the world starts in our immediate circle and with our network.
I 100% agree with that. You have to start within as well. I think when we talk about disparities, those are systematic reasons why we have these disparities. So in order to close those gaps or scale up, as the question was raised, you have to build institutions. You have to have either build them or control them. So we're creating or controlling institutions to close out disparities. But as far as making collective change, it really starts with the individual first. It's what I call the united independent effort. Like, you have to get yourself better and be okay with understanding that that is going to be an uncomfortable growth pattern, because when you start healing, when you start doing your work, other people around you will start to act different. Okay. And when they act different, it might not feel good, but you have to stay on your purpose, like we were talking about earlier, and keep moving forward. You know, there's a lot of pain in the growth zone, right? There's no comfort in growth zone, and there's no growth in the comfort zone. And you have to be able to continue to move forward. Our community has so many layers of struggle that one of the biggest things that we're gonna have to do to move forward is understand that we deal with trauma and be okay with that, and understand that we have to deal with the trauma that we've experienced, both from outside of our community and inside, because it's a twofold problem that we have that's going on. And the trauma that we have experienced, some of us, we block it out. I mean, let's get real. All of us on the line, we're college educated. We went to a D1 school like that. A lot of folks who are in our position, who've had our experience, they don't believe that they had any trauma. But going to the University of Minnesota might have been a traumatic experience just in itself, and we don't even realize it. So we have to be able to be honest about what we've experienced, be able to actually label it. Don't see ourselves as victims, but see it as ourselves as, pretty much beings of resilience, and be able to move forward and support each other to the best of our ability. One element is business, but we need education. We need to really work on families. And we already kind of touched on this, but male-female dynamics is extremely important. We talk about uplifting our community. There's so much domestic violence, just disrespect just in general that we go through, that it's going to be hard to build and sustain a community when we can't even get together on our just a peer level. So that's a big question. I'm just going to touch on it a little bit. I'll pass it on to Anthony.
What I'll do is I'm going to add, I think, a precursor to both of those responses. And I think that right now, when we talk about disparities, one of the things I would really push us to do is to begin to make a very clear statement of the nature of the disparities. And so I think that if we clearly just talk about and challenge, that we want to recognize and rectify historical injustices, that we are clear that the disparities and inequalities that we see, that the inequities in the the social and economic factors are the key contributors to that, right? That these disparities are related to a long legacy of injustice and disinvestment and intentional, cultural destruction, and not the character of the people. And we, and I'll say educated Black people especially have to be very careful as we approach it sometimes, because we have our own caste system. We have a color caste, we have an educational, we're still working out white supremacy on ourselves. So we have to do that piece. And the last thing we have to do is we all have to put the definition of structural racism on the tips of our tongues and talk about it as a normalization of historical, cultural and institutional and interpersonal dynamics that routinely advantage white people while producing cumulative and chronic adverse outcomes for people of color. And we have to, if we have to accept that, we have to, really know that that is the case, so that we will come up with different solutions, because there is a way where we talk about these things sometimes as really the character of the people who are historically oppressed, and really realize that what we are challenging people to do is to redistribute resources, all resources, in a way that will begin to support Black people, people of color, low to moderate income families, and women achieving optimal health. And that idea, even in terms of the language, I mean, for all of us that are working, if you have time and you look at the United Nations social determinants of health as outcomes, it begins to address those things that actually are represented by the trauma that Black people are experiencing. And it gives us a much more holistic approach to any work that we do. And I think, that's just really important, that we call white supremacy out for real, that we fully acknowledge that what we are seeing in our communities, the trauma, the challenge, the lack of resources, the disparities, are the result of it working. And the dual piece that Brandon is talking about is the internalized aspects of white supremacy, right? And we just have to be very intentional and exact in naming it, so that we can put a direct assault on it, in this next generation.
Absolutely, man. Thank you. So we've got one last question from the audience here. And I think a really important one is, what do you think Black alumni can do to affect change at the University of Minnesota? And this is certainly, locally and abroad, but what can be done, whether it's individually or collectively, what can we do?
I'll start. I'll say, I think you all are beginning it. I really, I'm not even kidding. I'm going to choose and say that, if we live in Minneapolis, and it sounds like we have a lot of Minneapolis, the median household income in North Minneapolis is $29,000 a year. I mean, that is it. And I'm going to venture that the median household income of the average Black alum is significantly higher than that. And we need to turn back towards the University of Minnesota collectively and threaten to be donors unless they don't change. You know what I mean? I think our collective power as alumni is really our power. The University of Minnesota is a significantly powerful institution, and our ability to sway their policy and sway their scholarship and recruitment and treatment, the trauma that is being inflicted on Black people. We have a very important role to play in it, and it happens with what you all have done, bringing us back together and have multiple generations of Black alumni reaching back to the U simultaneously. The power of that, they could not turn away from it. They could not turn away from it.
That's a really good answer. I'm gonna be a little hypocritical of my answer because you forced me to look in that mirror. And I think one of the things that we could do as alumni is connect back to the Black students who are on campus, and whether it's from mentorship or apprenticeship or something, or just to be a sounding board to help them through that process, because we've been there. Now, the U's changed a lot since I graduated in 2008, but the experiences of the students is probably very similar to the experiences that I've had. And being able to help those young people navigate through that process is very important. You know, I was a first generation college student. I was just happy to get on campus and get up out the hood, to be completely honest with you. And I didn't know nothing. I mean, I really navigated a lot of that on my own. And I'm sure there's other students on campus right now, or virtually, that are going through the same situation. So being able to connect and offer that opportunity for them to connect with us is very important. And they need to build networks. I mean, one of the biggest opportunities of a college experience is your network. We have these sayings, your network is your net worth. And the Black students there, they need something. If they're not in a frat or a sorority, or they don't play sports, they don't have a network. And there's a lot of Black students who don't fall in any of those categories. So that'd be my answer.
That's good. Honestly, I didn't know how to answer that question when you first posed it, because I feel like being here, I've been so disconnected, if I'm being honest, from the U of M. And so I would be interested to see from the perspective of, as Brandon mentioned, the actual students, Black students on campus. And maybe this is something, Ernest, that you and your team would do, is actually to reach out to them and say, how are ways that we can be more involved? Or how would you like alumni to show up? You know, or what is, and I'm trying to think now, maybe that's a question we can ask ourselves, right? As alumni, is what did we wish we had in that support? Because when you first asked that question, I was like, that's a good question. I don't know. Being so disconnected, feeling disconnected sometimes, and just in my own world and what's going on here. But I think it's a good question to maybe pose to all of us, to ask ourselves, what is one thing we wish we had? And then maybe posing to those current students, you know, how are ways that the Black alumni can show up for you, and actually asking them what they need and what that looks like. And then going from there, building that out. And in addition to what Anthony said.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, I think your presence here is a massive step, right? And it may not feel massive, but I think creating spaces where alumni can connect with one another and engage and really build bridges, right, across state lines, across the globe, creating space like this, I think, has a massive impact, and it makes our alumni network something that's real, something that becomes more tangible. And as we do more things like this and we engage in this way, I think there are more opportunities. You know, as we build relationships, we start to realize that those relationships become vessels for opportunities to flow. Right. And so if we can continue in this pattern of connect with one person that's a familiar face, who maybe you didn't even meet on campus, but you learn that they're an alum, and you engage with them, connect with them, and then you link up with other alum that you both know, however many degrees of separation, closing those gaps, I think creates more space for great things to happen, for massive impact to be had. So I think this is an amazing first step, and truly appreciate each of you just being willing to make the time to participate and engage in this conversation. I also know that our UMBAN as a board has engaged with, you know, a number of different student organizations. The Black Student Union specifically has expressed interest in establish some type of mentorship program. And so there's been some ongoing conversation about what that could look like, engaging with the Afro Studies Department, and sort of leaning into the opportunity to have some conversation. Even the fact that we've connected with the official university's alumni association as an affiliate, I think is a step in the right direction for us to be able to engage in a way that allows us to have a significant amount of impact. So it's exciting. It's an exciting time to be a part of the work that's happening through this organization. And just thank you all for being part of what we're building here. So I think we have had an extremely productive conversation. A ton of jewels and gems came out of everything we talked about today. I want to thank all of you once again, but also everybody who joined the call today. Thank you for being here. And remember that this is the first of 2 events happening for the World Tour. We will see everyone tomorrow, 6 p.m. Central Time for a happy hour and game night. There's an RSVP link. You should be able to see that in the chat. Additionally, we also have t-shirts available for the Black Alumni Network to purchase and be part of the movement. All right, so join the movement. Can't stop, won't stop. Be a part of the action of the University of Minnesota's Black Alumni Network. Thank you all once again. Truly appreciate everybody. Check out the chat for the links to your apparel, to the event that's coming up tomorrow. And please make an effort to engage with one another, connect with one another, and be a part of what's happening with the Black Alumni Network.
Thank you, everybody.
Yep, peace, everybody.